This is Mac OS Ken.
The dates are set for WWDC, positive takes on Apple and China, and Apple promotes Apple on apple.com. It is Wednesday, the 27th of March, 2024. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/MacOSCan. Dates are out for Apple's Worldwide Developer Conference 2024. The Cupertino company issued a press release Tuesday urging interested parties to block off the week of the 10th of June through the 14th. The bad news: if you were hoping for an in-person WWDC, those days appear to be well and truly over. I know, there was something cool about developers descending all at once. I used to love dining in restaurants near Moscone during WWDC and eavesdropping on attendees who were somewhere between excited and freaked out about the new tools available and the possibilities ahead. There is good news, though. The number of people who can take part is virtually limitless. Like, really, really accessible thanks to a new YouTube channel set up by Apple. A piece from Mac Rumors says the Cupertino company on Tuesday launched a new Apple developer YouTube account, which will be used to share WWDC sessions and events. Of course, the piece says Apple also plans to share content on the developer website and the Apple developer app. Also, there will be an in-person component for a very lucky few, or a lucky very few, or a very lucky very few. As they've done for the past year or two, Apple will host a special event on day one of the conference. The company says that will provide developers the opportunity to watch the keynote at Apple Park, meet with Apple team members, and take part in special activities. Space will be limited, and details on how to apply to attend can be found on the Apple developer site and the developer app. Whatever will the conference cover? Well, there's what's stated, what's expected, and what's hinted. On the stated, Apple VP of Worldwide Developer Relations, Susan Prescott, says, WWDC is all about sharing new ideas and providing Apple's amazing developers with innovative tools and resources to help them make something even more wonderful. On the expectations, the Mac Rumors piece mentioned earlier has a list. It includes news around iOS and iPadOS 18, macOS 15, and more. As for the hinted, leave it to Jaws. Another piece from Mac Rumors had Apple Senior VP of Worldwide Marketing Greg Joswiak posting on Twitter's remains, "Mark your calendars for WWDC 24, June 10 through 14. It's going to be absolutely incredible." Okay, that doesn't sound like a hint when said. When read, though, the A in absolutely and I in incredible, the first one, both of those are capitalized. That continues the AI teases the company started just under a couple of months ago. It was on the first quarter earnings call on the 1st of February that Apple CEO Tim Cook promised details around Apple's ongoing work in artificial intelligence later this year, which is always getting closer. Entranced, enchanted, and enthralled by Apple and AI is Melius research analyst Ben Reitzes. Not only is he not worried about talk of Apple talking with potential partners for folding existing LLMs into Apple's ecosystem, he sees precedent for it and money to be made in it. Apple 3.0 posted part of a note he wrote, wherein Reitzes set the Wayback Machine for 2003. A lot of people then thought Apple would buy a record label, thus buying its way into music. What Apple did instead was the iTunes Store. Rather than making its own music to sell, it made deals with music providers to sell their wares, taking a bit off the top for itself. Skip ahead 21 years. Skip ahead 21 years and Reitzes sees Apple doing something similar in AI. Quoting his note, "We need a new kind of app store in a world where we type or speak securely into generative AI applications that get stuff done. In fact, we think generative AI driven by voice commands is going to boom into 2025, making the iPhone even more useful. Apple has a vision for this that provides access to the AI apps that run both on their own model and or on the LLMs of your choice, securely, through a new kind of service. We think this vision monetizes their mobile real estate yet again, potentially replacing or augmenting the money it receives from Google's default search placement in Safari. The Apple we know is likely not paying for anything. Google is the one who needs them." It's kind of crazy, but it just might work. Mr. Reitzes has a buy rating on Apple shares. His price target on the shares is $220. Support for China from Apple and support for Apple in China. While a lot has been made of Apple seeking to diversify its supply chain, spreading manufacturing beyond the Middle Kingdom, Wedbush analyst Daniel Ives says the Cupertino company is shoring its place in China, even as it offshores some of its supply chain. Apple 3.0 ran part of a note he wrote on Tuesday. While the world focuses on manufacturing moving to India, Vietnam, and elsewhere, Ives says Apple has actually increased its investments and retail footprint in China over the past year. While Apple faces regulatory issues here in the States and in the European Union, Ives says China, which has been a headache for Apple over the past year, appears to be changing its tune as the threat of Apple taking its supply chain outside China has been heard loud and clear from Beijing. He seems to have seen Apple CEO Tim Cook's trip this week to the China Development Forum as not only a show of Apple's commitment to China, but also as an olive branch to key companies like Apple that the tide in China will start to change. Mr. Ives has an outperform rating on Apple's shares. His price target on the shares is $250. iPhone demand in China seems to be stabilizing. That's the word from investment bank TD Cowen. Apple Insider highlights findings from that firm. According to the site, analysts say that most smartphone manufacturers, including Apple, have seen forecasts remain steady. Samsung and Huawei are doing better, with TD Cowen saying that their targets increased modestly. Steady stands to look pretty good for Apple, though. The piece has the firm pointing out that the current shipping figures look better year over year, chiefly because the iPhone 14 range had production problems in 2022 into 2023. Where things really get exciting, though, is with iPhone 16 and whatever Apple folds into that. Analysts figure that will lead to an acceleration in upgrades. TD Cowen has a positive rating on Apple shares, according to the site investing.com. The firm's price target on the shares is $220. Two more takes on Apple in China, both from The Information by way of 9to5Mac. In terms of growing its business, the report says Apple is pursuing ways to launch its own content services like Apple TV Plus in China. Because of censorship rules in China, 9to5Mac has The Information indicating that Apple would need to find a local partner to help run the services and ensure compliance with those rules. The report says that a senior China-based Apple leader last year told colleagues the company was pursuing such an arrangement, but it isn't clear how close it got to a deal. Maybe Tencent could help? They seem to be giving Apple Vision Pro a boost. The other bit of information from the information indicates that Tencent has agreed to make some of its most important apps available on Vision Pro when it launches later this year. Tencent makes a number of the top apps in China, ranging from social media to streaming to gaming. It's unclear whether Tencent will develop new versions of apps specifically for Apple's headset. That said, even if it only allows the iPad versions to run on the device, apps that are practically expected will be available on Apple's special spatial computer. Apple's pushing itself in new ways on its own site. A piece from Cult of Mac says the iPhone maker has updated its iPhone comparison option with a new Why Upgrade tool. Oh, you might think your iPhone is fine, but let Apple tell you why it isn't. For example, says the Cult, the tool shows that someone still rocking a basic iPhone 11 moving to an iPhone 15 Pro Max would get a better camera with 4 times the resolution, a GPU that's twice as fast, a USB-C port, the dynamic island, and other enhancements. See? You hate your phone more already. Softening that blow, the comparison tool also tells potential traders how much Apple could give them for their old iPhone, which is generous. I mean, offering that info is generous. People often say you can get better deals selling iPhones to third-party services besides Apple. Consult your doctor or your priest and ask if trading iPhones is right for you. Apple's other website change is a little more front and center. A piece from 9to5Mac says the Cupertino company has built a service carousel for its homepage at apple.com. It is way below the fold, though. That's why I say it's a little more front and center. Scroll down, scroll down, scroll down some more, and the piece says you'll find a rotating roster of Apple TV Plus originals. Under that, the piece says there's a new slider featuring content from other Apple services, Apple Music, Apple Arcade, and Apple Fitness Plus. Previously, the report says Apple promoted these services through the Entertainment tab of the site. Now they have significant homepage presence, albeit below the fold. Way below. And finally today, signs of life for the second season of the Apple TV Plus series, Severance. iMore says executive producer Ben Stiller was a guest on the Roommates show on YouTube. Mostly they talked about the NBA, but the weird workplace dystopian dramedy did come up. Stiller confirmed that the show is still shooting. According to the EP, it's coming soon, and we don't have an actual date, but I've been working on the second season of it for a long time, since we had a strike, an actor and writer strike back last year. Went from like May to October, so that cut us off for a while. But we're going to be shooting until probably like the end of April, and it will be coming out sometime after that, soon. Cut us off? Really? Not severed? Really? macOS Can, brought to you by me, and supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSCan. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media. Online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. Info at macoscan.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Can. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.